stories like yours really interest me, because I think that a lot of people can relate, in the sense that, for example, I interviewed Bruce Buffer yesterday, for example.
Oh, great. I
Yeah,
actually met Bruce about a year ago. He's a great dude through a friend of mine.
super cool,
Yeah.
man. But that's why I wanted to interview him, as sort of along the same lines as why I wanted to interview you, because you both followed a passion and you both managed to work for yourself in an industry where there really is no clear-cut route to success. There's no like blueprint to follow. So that's really why I wanted to do this today and talk about your story.
Cool.
So you're a kid from Blackburn, England. You chased a passion. You're now part of what Men's Fitness Magazine branded California's #1 gym. So let's dive into that. So how old were you when you made the move to Los Angeles? And what was the reason behind this? So like, not many people from Blackburn want or even can make that, transition. What was that decision and process like?
Yeah, I as a teenager, growing up in Blackburn, I always just wanted to leave. Like, I always wanted to go to the city, like go to this small working class town. If anyone listening isn't familiar with Blackburn, it's just a small, old school working class town, not really much going on. And as a teenager, I just wanted to go to the cities. So I wanted to be in Manchester. I wanted to be in London. It was, where things were happening and things were alive. Stuff would stay open later. There's things to do, right? Just basic like desire to do things, instead of everyone just being locked indoors after 5 p.m. and nothing going on. I just found it super boring. The other thing as well was like, there was no real industry or anything. I could just feel like there was no ambition in the town, right? So other than going to football matches on a Saturday, I was like, that was like the highlight of everything, or going out drinking. So I was like, I just wanted to go and do something else. I had a real passion for sports and music growing up. So when it came time to, after school, like, all my friends went on to university. So around like 17, 18, my best friend at the time was a professional soccer player, and he was on pre-season. He had like a YTS contract with Blackpool, which is close by. We were both just the same. He didn't really want to do that, and I didn't really want to go to university. We were both just like really into music and wanted to travel. And a main like ambition of mine was just to come to LA. Like, I mean, all my friends would go to like Spain, Ibiza, like, the popular spots to get good weather and stuff. And I was like, nah, I want to go to LA because it's like, it looks amazing, like beaches, lifestyle, all the record labels, music industry, fitness, like, that's where it seems to be at. And so we just like saved the money we had, and I like worked a part-time job. We just came out here every like 2 or 3 months instead of like doing what we were supposed to do, which was university and for him soccer. So instead of university, I just kept coming out here all the time, come back to England, work, save up, go back to LA, come back. And every time I came back to England, say I went out to California in like a September, right? I just felt on a massive high, because I'm like, here I am in LA, California, trying to meet people and check this place out. And I'm like my friends back home are stuck in university lectures right now. And I'm like, yes, I'm winning, so it's on a massive high. But then as soon as I came back, I'm like, I've got to go back in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? They were only short trips. So then as soon as I came back, it was like double the pain, because then I'm like, back to my job. I'm like, it's dark at 4 o'clock. Like, so I hated it, being in Blackburn even more. So it just kind of kept driving that ambition. The more I went and the more I came back, it was like 2 real big extremes, like in sun, beach, doing whatever I wanted, trying to build something, and then coming back home to like nothing, just dead endless. So that kind of was the start of my passion to move out here. I didn't actually move out here until 2005. So I was like 22, I think, at the time, 21, 22. And then the main reason, to answer your question, why I first wanted to come out here, was to try and get into the music industry. And you touched on, I'm in an industry now where there's no clear path to success, or there's no like real blueprint to get into those industries. And music industry is exactly the same. It was all about like what you had to offer and who you knew, and just kind of network and just try and get your foot in the door somehow. So that was my goal, was to get into the music industry and just be somewhat involved with music. like sports and fitness and that kind of, it was just something that I did like after work to, you know, go to the gym and try and stay in shape. And I just love running and stuff, but it wasn't something I thought I would ever get into for a career. I was always like focused on music industry. So yeah, I got an internship in the music industry, and then, you know, fast forward like 2 or 3 years into that job, and it was the same feeling that I was getting when I was in England. I was working in Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard, and that sounds really romantic and nice and exciting, but realistically I was like sat in traffic for an hour every morning, going into an office, sat on my laptop till 5 p.m. Really small company, not getting paid a ton of money, sitting in traffic for an hour and a half again, and repeating that Monday to Friday, and then I had my weekends. And then same thing, I was just like, I don't want this like 9 to 5 office existence. I'd never really felt myself like cut out for that or designed to do it. So yeah, I got really frustrated and overwhelmed and bored with that, and then started boxing. I'm a huge lifelong fan of boxing, and then just something just clicked. Like first session I had, I was like, I was dying to box, and I just thought, oh, I don't have time. And I was like, right, I'm just going to force it into my schedule and just do it. And started boxing after work, and like that just completely took over. I was like, right, this is what I need to be doing. I just love this too much. So the company that I was working for in the music industry kind of dropped off. It wasn't really going too well. It was doing all right, but my passion wasn't in it, which was probably a part of why it started to fall down a little bit. So that kind of fell apart, which I was in the back of my mind happy about, but I was left with the stress of, right, I still need to work. I was getting like unemployment money for about a year and a half. So while I was on that, it was kind of stressful because it was barely enough to cover bills and stuff while I was here. But I just felt relieved because I had time to try and figure out what I wanted to do. So after a couple of years of working an office job and kind of turning my back on wanting to do music, I'm like, right, I don't want to be in that industry. I don't really want to do that. It didn't really get me where I wanted. So I just started living like an athlete. Sorry, go on. Sorry, I'm giving you a really long answer.
No, it's great, man. I just wondered on that. Was that something that was always in you from a young age, where you realized that like you didn't want to follow the status quo, that sort of script that's given to us here in the UK, especially, where, you know, you go to school to get good grades, they get to university gets you a good grade, which gets you a good job. Was it always in you where you're like, that's not the pattern for me?
Totally. It was just never in me at all. I remember clearly I was doing A-levels after high school. If there's anyone watching or listening from America or whatever, A-levels in the UK is like 2 years after high school. You do advanced education before university. So while I was doing that, I remember clear like vision. I was sat in a lesson, and the lesson for the day was filling out your university application. It was like a whole lesson on how to do it, and you had to pick the universities and read through the what are they called, prospectuses or whatever, for the universities and stuff. And I just remember like everyone being really into it, and they were like looking through these books, like which university are they going to go to, and like they're right into it, their heads next to the paper, like filling it out, like really excited and all this. And I remember just sitting there, and I didn't even open the book, and I just like saw this form to fill in. And I hate filling out forms as it is, right? Still do. But like, I just remember looking at this form thinking like, why am I doing this? I'm not going to go to any university. I just have zero interest in this whatsoever. Like, I don't want to do it. And now, even then, I was just thinking like, right, I'm not even going to be living here. I'm going to be living in California. There's no, I don't know. It was just weird. Like, it's just definitely not cut out for it. It was just something I never wanted to do. I think especially that age, you know, it's like when you're a teenager, when people are telling you what to do, you naturally kind of like, the more people tell you what to do, the more you're going to like not want to do it. So there's a little bit of that in me. And they're like, yeah, you've got to fill these out. You've got to decide on the top 3 universities you're going to do. And I'm just thinking like, no, I'm not. No, I don't, you know? And when you're younger, if someone's telling you this is what you got to do, you can like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to do it. But then when you start getting to like 16, 17, 18, you start to realize like they're telling you to do something, but it's like, now I've kind of got this side of my brain developed where I'm like, no, I don't actually have to do this, you know? And everyone's like, oh, if you don't go to university, you're not going to get a job. Blah, blah, blah. I was never even like worried about it. I just thought, I just don't want to go. So if I don't want to go, I'm not going to go. So yeah, I remember definitely not wanting to do that. And it's interesting now, fast forwarding, like that's like 20 years ago. There's companies starting up and discussions being had about how the education system needs to change and how we can get people doing jobs that they're more designed to enjoy and what they're naturally good at and all that kind of stuff. So it's come a long way. But yeah, I remember not wanting to do that at all.
When you made that initial decision to sort of quit the comfortable, safe option, so you quit a job, you quit the office job, and you think, right, I'm going to go all in on this idea of becoming my own boss or starting your own business. That is a decision, I think that point, I think everyone dreams of being their own boss. I think everyone dreams of having their own business. But there comes a point where you can't just be interested anymore. You have to be committed. And you're met with a decision. You say you either have to go for it or you don't. And I think that's where a lot of people's dreams end, where they think, I can't risk it. I can't risk quitting the job. You know, I'm climbing the ladder. It's not worth the risk. What was it like for you making that risk and making that decision? Was it an easy decision for you?
Well, in the beginning, when I was trying to figure out like what I was going to do, like just to rewind, keep going on in kind of order. When I was trying to figure out what I was doing, I had like time on my hands. I didn't have anything on my schedule every single day, right? So I would just wake up, run, watch YouTube videos of boxing training and nutrition and training, and just be obsessed with it. Like just created my own textbooks, like just buried my head in it. And then I would go down the gym and train for like 2 hours, come home, and just got like really into it. But there was still that stress, like this isn't going to be a career or a job for me. This is just something that I'm like, clearly really interested in. And I was just still kind of stressed, like, what am I going to do for work? What am I going to do for work? I just want to do something that I'm like remotely interested in. So at that point, while I was like learning and trying to develop boxing skills and get fit and learn as much as I could, I got a job locally in one of the beach towns here, just working at a running store. And that was actually really good because it was a retail job, but it kind of it allowed me to travel a little bit for like events and stuff. And it got me kind of to see the fitness industry a little bit, working with like Brooks running shoes, and I got to go to Nike events and stuff like that. And I was just like, whoa, this is amazing. And I'd go to these like Nike events for the release of like the latest running shoe. And it was like 4 times a year, or like a couple of times a year, they'd do these things. And they were just the coolest things. It was like really creative. And I was like, whoa, it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm just like at a Nike event. Like, this is insane. Because I was just still so ingrained into that mindset that I'm like, should be in the office. Like, and the other thing was that my partner at the time, she was a hairdresser, right? She was a stylist. So her schedule was like different every day. Some days she might have a sleep in, then she'd have like a couple of clients in the afternoon, then maybe a later client and a day off, or she could just pick and choose kind of like where and when she wanted to work. And I was just like, man, that's amazing. Like, she can choose when she wants to work, right? And she was doing really well with it. And it was just the ultimate like existence for me. Like, being able to have like a clientele, do cool stuff with like companies that I'm interested in and things like that. So it all kind of started piecing together a little bit. But the reality was I had a job that was barely paying me anything. It was all just passion at that point, and learning and passion. But definitely in the back of my mind, I'm thinking I need to get a career at some point. I need to get a job. But it was a clear vision for me based off seeing my partner at the time, like how she lived her life and how free her schedule was and how in control of it she was. I was like, that's what I need to aim and work towards. And I didn't even start thinking about personal training until probably like, I don't know. I really seriously, I didn't think about it until Box and Burn started. So, yeah, like the business side and being your own boss and all that really didn't kick in until I was like actually in it. And I was like, oh wow, I'm actually in it now, you know. So just to fill in that gap between going from that job to Box and Burn starting and that whole thing starting was Tony Jeffries was over here for his last 2 or 3 training camps for his fights. And I reached out to him as a huge boxing fan. I like followed all the British boxers and stuff. I reached out to him and saw that he was in California, like right near me. Like, if you need anyone to run with, or I'd love to help you out while you're here, anything you need, let me know. I was just trying to like get my foot in the door in like fitness boxing world, you know. And he got back to me and was like, yeah, definitely. Like, I'm actually not going to be in training camp for the next 6 months or whatever. He's like, but I'm going to be out here for a while. I'm doing personal training up in Santa Monica. If you want to come and do a session with me, I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And the boxing coaches that I had then, I like fought amateur and been in a bunch of gyms in and around LA and like just obsessed with boxing. And I was still working at the running store too. The boxing coaches that I had, they were great. Don't get me wrong. I learned a ton, but it wasn't like anyone that I could like really relate to, or you know what I mean? It wasn't like, this is the best. It was like, oh, I'm just going to learn from him. It was like, there was no real like relationship there. So the minute I started training with Tony, it's like, oh, someone from the north of England, somebody I've followed a career, somebody I can look up to, could have that banter and that laugh because we're both from England, like talk about stuff that, you know, like, so it just made it like more like I'm hanging out in the gym with Tony rather than like, oh, I'm going to do a training session. So I was like, wow, this is the best. So about 6 months into that, we were going to try to do an amateur boxing tournament up in Oxnard, and he was like, it's like an 8-fight tournament. I can get you on that. I was like, all right, sounds good. And then we started doing some sparring and stuff. And then he's like, I'm doing these group classes. I'm going to start doing them at the beach. Would you want to start holding the mitts and like helping me do these group classes? And I was like, yeah. And I'd done a little bit of mitts, not a ton, just with friends and stuff. I'd never really like actually coached anybody. And the minute that I started doing that, I was like, right, he's like, let's not do this amateur boxing stuff. He's like, just forget about it. He's like, you don't need to be getting punched in the head. Like, you know, it's not going to go anywhere. Just start thinking about the training side and helping me with these classes. I could really use your help. Like, all right. So then I was working running store, I think 5 days a week. I'd drive all the way up to Santa Monica from there, go and do these boot camp classes with Tony and his business partner at the time, Kevin, or he's still his business partner with the gyms. I'd go and help them out. So it was just the 3 of us teaching people boxing fitness classes on the beach, like 3 times a week. And then I'd just go up there, pure love for it, and I'd just share any bit of knowledge I could. And then he goes, oh, I'll be able to pay you like $20 for every time you come and do these classes. If you want, I'll just give you cash. And I was like, whoa, this is amazing. I'm like going to get paid to go and catch punches for people. Like, this is insane. And I didn't really have to do anything other than just do the mitts, right? Tony and Kev would lead the warm-ups. They'd explain the class. They'd set the circuits up. They'd lead the shadow boxing and all that. So I was just kind of stood there, just taking it all in. Like, how are they doing all this? And then just like get people on the mitts and just develop my mitt skills a little bit. So yeah, I was just loving it. And then we did that for a few months, and it just grew and grew and grew. Like, every week on the beach, there'd be more and more people, and we just do donations only. And then it was like 20 people. Oh, this week it's 25. Oh, this week it's 30. It just kept growing. People would walk past, like, oh, how do I get involved with this? Because there was nothing like it then. There was no boxing going on at the beach then. And this is like 2011, 2012. And he's like, I think we're going to get a facility. We're going to open a gym. And I was like, all right, great. He's like, so I think I might be able to like get you some work there when we open. I remember that phone call really clear, and I was just like on a high for days. I'm like, I've got a legitimate chance here to work in a boxing gym. Like, this is it, you know? So I just got really excited about it, and I was just like, went all in, started working at the gym a couple of times a week, lessened my schedule, the running store. And then another clear as day thing that I really remember, Tony said to me, he goes, what do I need to pay you, or what do you need to make to cancel that job and just be full-time in this? I was like, this is it, you know, I've done like anything, just like I'm dying to be here full-time. So I pretty much lived in that gym for like the first 2 years and just did everything I could to be in there. And then it's like I started getting a couple of clients, And then again, long answer to your question, that's when it kind of kicked in, like the business thing, like I'm my own boss now, I'm going to start having clients. And really naive at the beginning, like no idea about like, I'm my boss. I was just like so focused on just trying to like figure out how to do a good personal training session and what I was going to teach people. I'm really nervous and just trying to kind of learn on the job and just doing that day in, day out over the weeks and months and years, you know, just build up that skill set. So, yeah, the business side of it didn't really kick in for like a year or two. Just kind of just trying to figure out exactly what you're going to do. But I'd love to dive into like that business stuff if you want to go more into it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I definitely want to get into. Just to cut in on this conversation. I wonder if you mentioned that amateur boxing and all the training you went through in that regard. I wonder if, you know, you didn't pursue that any further, but I wonder if it served you in the sort of world of entrepreneurship, because if, you know, I've interviewed, I think we've had 2 boxers on this podcast. So Anthony Agogo and Lawrence Okoli. And
nice.
the vibe I get from them is that like boxing and the discipline it taught them, they're just grinders in whatever they do. It doesn't have to be in boxing. They know how to grind. So do you think that discipline maybe you learned through boxing has served you in the business world as well? Because like a long day might be nothing to you because you know what the grind is like.
Big time. Boxing and running. Those 2 things. I love those 2 things. They're my like number 1 and number 2 physical activities. I just love doing them. But yeah, it's so interesting. They both build so much mental strength. Obviously, they're both building like physical stamina and endurance, but they require so much discipline. And to be good at both of them, you've got to go through so much, like obviously physical pain and stress, but because that as soon as that physical stress comes on you, then it switches to a mental game, right? It's like, how long can I endure this like burning in my legs, or the pain like from being punched, or that rib shot or whatever? Like, how can I overcome that, right? And then, you know, you've got like a mile left to go and you've got to hold your pace or get faster, or you're racing and you've got to like get past this next guy. That competitive spirit and that desire to not let this thing that you're doing beat you mentally and to push through it, I think is huge. And that has definitely stood me. I apply that mindset to anything I'm doing, like whether it's trying to make the website better, or like, you know, like trying to figure out how we can make our gloves and merchandise that we're building like the best it can be. It's like, I just want it to be the best all the time. And like, yeah, I'm just determined to complete it and get it done. It's like, you know, I just see it as a huge challenge now, like the business end. Definitely it's a huge challenge and I love it. But yeah, you're right. Like, having gone through, you know, thousands of miles of running and like tons of rounds of sparring and hard training and circuit training and all that kind of stuff. Like, and even just having an amateur fight, like getting in there, huge nerves, not knowing what to expect, and being stood face to face with someone who's going to try and hurt you. That's like a huge experience to go through. And it doesn't matter how many times you've done that. Just doing it one time, it is a huge life learning experience. And I think definitely it's kind of like an unusual mindset to want to put yourself into that situation and then to get through it as well. But yeah, definitely every day I feel like that's developed that mental strength for me.
Yeah, I imagine it would just give you the resilience you need for entrepreneurship. And on the subject of entrepreneurship, what was, you know, as someone who found themselves in that world, like almost accidentally, just through, you mentioned you were just focused on your passion, you weren't thinking about business, and you suddenly found yourself, you know, as your own boss in that regard. What were some of the early mistakes or lessons you learned really quickly in entrepreneurship?
Like, first off was just the whole financial structure of everything, things that you're not taught in school, right? And Tony and Kev were great at Box and Burn, like getting me set up and like trying to help me like promote me and do all the marketing for me and all that kind of stuff, and like helping me with like, this is how you're going to manage your schedule, this is how you're going to check your clients out, this is how they're going to get paid, this is how you do an invoice, like the basics like that. I didn't have a clue about any of that stuff, so they really helped me. But then all of a sudden learning things like, okay, I'm filing my own taxes, and then this is a write-off, and this is not a write-off, and this is an expense. It's not. I was just like, what is this? Because I was just used to like, I just get a check, my taxes are taken out, health insurance is paid, all that stuff. And yeah, just those annoying adult problems that you don't get taught in school. I didn't have a clue about any of that. And I'd say my advice to somebody going into working for themselves or trying to start their own company and business, like arm yourself with that base level knowledge of like how you pay your taxes, how you invoice people, your point of sale, like all those basics need to be like on. You need to understand it and get clear on it before you start trying to like grow and scale and do your thing. Have that foundation built, because in the beginning I didn't. I'll go to the gym, train people, invoice, your money's coming in, and then next thing I'm like, oh, tax return, like how does this work? Like what do I do? You know? It was just like kind of stressful, like, oh wow, I've got to save so much to one side to pay it, you know, like and that's naivety on my part, I get that, but I think so many people that are going into it trying to work for themselves are probably in the position I was in, where they're just in love with the idea of the company or whatever they've got to offer, and they're like super passionate about it. And those little tiny, well, they're huge things, but they're the basic things can tend to get overlooked and not thought about. So I definitely like pay attention to that stuff, and just having a base level knowledge of how business works, you know, like just basic like how profit works, and you know, like cost of goods and your overheads, and you know, like all that kind of stuff. Like the more you can arm yourself with a base level business knowledge, the better. And I didn't have any formal training on that stuff. It's just something that I've like learned and become passionate about all the time.
So at this point in the conversation, it's clear that you found a way not only to chase your passion, but then go on to monetize your passion, which I think, you know, a lot of people who listen to this podcast, I think that is their goal. What would your advice be then to people who might be listening to this, who have a passion and they know, you know, if there's a way I can monetize it, that would be my dream job and I could give my everything to it. But like yourself, there may not be that clear-cut blueprint to success. Right. They don't know how to pursue their passion any further than just a hobby. What would your advice be to those people who are trying to figure out, how do I turn this from a passion into something bigger?
Into a job? Yeah, like first off, demonstrate your passion. So like show that this is all you care about and it's all you know about, right? And like I mean, there's no easier time to do that now than the age we're living in, you know, like start producing content, like put stuff out there, like showing that you're doing it and that you know about it, whether it's YouTube videos, blogs, like podcasting, like what you're doing. Just demonstrate it, get the word out. This is what I love. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I'm an expert in. And this is what I do, right? This is who I am and it's what I do. I think a lot of people are still kind of confused with the identity. It's like, oh, I've got my 9-to-5 job, but I really want to be the thing that I'm doing in the evenings, right? I'd love to be able to wake up and just do this all day. Okay, well, show that that's all you're doing, right? Put it out there that one thing that you're doing in the evenings, it might be like 2 or 3 hours you're doing every night. You want to be a thing. Just put all your time and energy into that. If you can't afford to like scale back on the job or the hours or create the time to do it, just demonstrate that you're doing that one thing and talk about it and have conversations about it and meet people and network with people who are doing that same thing. In terms of actually trying to monetize it, the biggest advice that I can give, and I'm not a huge fan of people who, there's a lot of bullshit out there. It's like, oh, get your dream job and you can do whatever you want to do and all that. And it's like, not really. Like you've got to be good. You've got to have the talent to be able to be in a position where somebody wants to pay for your service for that thing, right? And I think a lot of people are like, man, I'm working like 12, 14-hour days on this thing and I'm putting all my time and energy into it and I know what I'm doing and still nobody wants to buy. It's like, well, ask yourself why. Are you worth what you're asking for? Are you really as good as you think you are? Like, be honest with yourself. And in the beginning, and that, I think that comes down to having a humble mindset. In the beginning with me, when it was personal training, I knew that I was not the best personal trainer ever. And I know I'm still not, I probably never will be, but like, I knew I had to learn. I knew I had to get better. And I knew there was things that I could fill the gaps to like make my value go up. So in the beginning, it was just like, yeah, like small price point. Yep, you can come and hit mitts with me, right? I know how to catch a few punches and I can teach you a few things boxing wise. But then I was like, if I want to like up my revenue, and then I looked at other personal trainers in the industry who were like smashing it and training celebrities and huge at conventions and seminars, and people wanted to like get pictures with him. So I'm like, what's he doing? So I'd look at them like, oh wow, he's good, he knows his stuff. And then you'd see like his content is like super scientific or like super knowledgeable. I'm like, wow, this guy knows his shit, he's really good. And then it's not even sometimes about how much you know as well. It's just like, if you know one tiny thing, but you can convey it amazingly and you can coach it really well and you're a great communicator, that goes so far. It's like, I don't claim to know everything about everything in terms of fitness, strength and conditioning, boxing, but I feel like I'm good at being able to communicate and relate it to people. And when they've got a question, be able to answer it and be humble and nice with people and build relationships. I think that's just as important as your actual knowledge base. So yeah, I think the number one thing I'd say is just be honest and realistic with yourself. Like I've heard trainers go, "Oh yeah, I'm charging $200 a session." I'm like, "What are you talking about? You have like 2 sessions a week. You can't put that price point on yourself. Like there's growth to this." And I think people jump to the end way quicker and think like, "Oh, I know what I'm doing now. This is where I'm at." And it's like, no, you're not. Like, be realistic with where you're at, and just I always have that humble mentality that you can always get better and you can always grow and grow and grow. And I think if people have that mindset, they'll put the time and energy in to keep learning, keep being a student of the game, no matter what level they get to, and that's where your value starts to increase.
How detrimental do you think fear is to a lot of people who are pursuing their dreams? Because we had someone on this podcast before who said, you know, if you want to pursue your dream, you've got to be willing to look like an idiot. And, you know, I think you mentioned about putting content out there. And I think a lot of people get scared, they get put off, you know, for putting themselves out there. So I think about myself, for example, when we started this podcast, I had the idea for this podcast for years and I wanted to start it. And I was just too scared at the time. I was like, oh, what are my friends going to say?
Right.
What if someone posts it on Facebook and I get roasted? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you put it off because you're scared of what other people's opinions. But then it gets to a point where you just got to drop that fear and just think, like, if you don't take that plunge, if you don't take that risk, or if you keep caring about what people think, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, to try and reassure anyone listening who does feel like that, like, immediately take that out of your thought process. You cannot care what people think. The only people that you should care what they think are the people that are actually going to be a part of your business or your clients. Those are the people that you need to value their opinion on, not like what your dad says how great you are, right? Keeps blowing smoke up your ass. And you're like, oh, I'm amazing because my mum and dad tell me like I'm doing a great job and they're so proud of me. Of course they're going to say that. Like, or if it's on the negative side and like your friend that you grew up with is like, man, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing interviews? People on a podcast. I think listening to people's opinions is pretty important. I mean, we're kind of told quite a lot, like, don't care what people think, like ignore people. But I think it's pretty important to listen to people's feedback, but it's just about having that knowledge to decide who to listen to and who to filter out. And that just apply common sense. So if like an unknown account on your Instagram gives you a bunch of abuse, clearly filter that out, don't care, right? Whatever. But if your first client in whatever business you're in is telling you, look, I've got a bit of an issue with this, like, whoa, zone right in, fix that, listen to that big time. So try and take the fear element out and be in a realistic position, have that confidence. And again, it goes back to what I said in the last part about I've been being realistic with your own skill set and your ability level. If you know you're good at something, and you know and even if you know you're like not the greatest, or you're still learning and building, as long as you're learning and building, that will give you the confidence to not listen to the negatives and focus in on what does matter. And that will eliminate that fear that you're talking about to go and do what you want to do, because you know you're trying to figure this thing out. You know you're putting the time in to learn and get better and meet people and network and do the things that are the steps that are necessary to get to where you want to get to. That builds that confidence, and that as you build in that confidence, the fear won't even come into it. The fear will come into it when, and the nerves and the anxiety will come into it when you know you're trying to blag something. You know, like if you're not really sure what you're doing and someone's like, hey, I want to buy your service, like, that's where that fear will come into, and that doubt, and that's definitely going to be a part of it if you're still in that learning phase and figuring out how to be good at what you're doing. But that can be healthy too, because it forces you to think on your feet and kind of act quick and get stuff done. I remember a personal experience in the beginning when we started doing group classes at Box and Burn. The gym had opened, and then all of a sudden there's a class of like 20, 30 people, right? And it's me, Tony, and Kevin leading this class. And I remember Tony coming up to me saying, do you want to lead the warm-up today? And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. You guys do that. I'm just going to do the mitts. And he's like, no, it'd be good for you. Like, you should lead this warm-up. I'm like, well, I don't know like what movements to do. I'm really nervous. He's like, you'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Just kind of threw me in at the deep end. And what you're saying, that fear and that anxiety and the nerves, like, oh my God, I'm going to lead. Like 20 people are watching me and like relying on me to do this warm-up. And you start to overthink this huge moment. But it went fine, and everyone was like, oh yeah. And I went up to people after that, how was the warm-up? Oh, it was great. And like, oh wow, and that built confidence. So it's like you're saying, I think your question was like, I don't want to take that next step. I don't want to do it. That just do it. Just go. Because if I hadn't, if I had stood back from that moment and be like, no, I'm not doing the warm up, like your anxiety and your fear and your worry has beaten you.
It's interesting you say that, because it's reminded me of an example of my own where I've worked in numerous gyms, and I remember I remember passing my circuits qualification, and I was an apprentice gym instructor at the time, and they used to get me involved in the classes, the circuit classes. I'd sort of just float around and offer assistance here and there. And just like you mentioned with Tony, one evening I was in an old person's mobility circuit class, and I'd been doing it for weeks, and my boss just said to me, take the warm up. And I'm just like Tony said, and I remember I was just startled. I was like, what am I supposed to do? And I remember I went to the bathroom really quickly, and I was like, shit, what am I going to do? I'm going to do this. And I was terrified. And then it got to the point where there was no time left. The class started, and then you just go back. You just go to autopilot. You remember, everything you've been taught. And it made me think, like, if I was that scared in that moment, I wonder if there's been any examples, because you've worked with some, extremely successful people. I've seen videos of you with like Travis Barker and Debbie Ryan and Brendan Shaw. What is it like when you've got someone that successful and that high profile, and do you feel nerves at all, or is it that trust you've got in your own ability? Is that what gets you through? Is that the most important thing, that you trust that you are, your stuff?
Yeah, great question. And it's just kind of an extension of, like, it's just that what we've just been talking about, but on another level, and it just in a different scenario. It's like the first couple of times I remember first time training Travis Barker, Tony texted me. He's like, Travis Barker's coming in the gym today. He was out of town. He's like, can you do a session with him? Wants to come in at like 4 or whatever. And I was like a massive fan of him, like huge fan growing up. And like, whoa, this is insane. And I'd met him a couple of times in the gym before, just like really brief. And I was like, wow, I'm actually going to train him. Like, this is insane. I was like, yeah, of course I can. And it's the same thing. It's like, would I let the anxiety and the nerves and the like fact that I'm a fan of him like stop me from doing that? No, this is why I started to do this thing. Like, this is the dream right here. This is it. Like, I'm training somebody that I'm a huge fan of, who could probably advance my career for me to a whole new level. So yes, definitely. like first response, definitely doing it. Then when the session starts, at that time, like first session, I was like a little bit nervous, but I was like really clear and organized and structured with what I was going to do. I had that belief in my ability, and it was just more, it was more of an excited nerves rather than like, oh, what am I going to do? What's he going to be like? What's he going to say? It wasn't any of that. By that time, I was like confident, like, yeah, it's great. And the interesting thing with people who are at that level is the more you're just yourself and just you come across as a humble, normal person, you just accept them as like the normal person that they are, and you just have average everyday conversations, and you just focus on the training, which is what they're there for, and you help them, you show that you want to help them, then that's when the respect is created, and then they want to work with you more and more and more, and that relationship builds. So I just confidence, and now it's like those people I consider them like friends at this point. It's like, they're not, I don't really see them so much as like clients or whatever. I mean, technically they are, but they're on a social level, they're like friends. So it's like, and that's just comes down to what you said, like just being confident in what you're doing, and just being like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Let's train. Just focus on what they're actually there to do.
While we're on that subject of those clients, I wonder, you mentioned that you know them on a social level, and suddenly you find yourself where you're around these really successful people, and they're from different disciplines. They're from, different spheres. So you've got Travis Barker, music industry, Debbie Ryan, acting, you've got Brendan Schaub, fighting, podcasting, entrepreneur. What have you noticed? They're all successful people, and there's often the big question in personal development is, what is the sort of secret or science to success, which I don't think you can answer. But have you noticed any commonalities or sort of common traits that you've found that really successful people tend to share?
Biggest one is work ethic. They all work their asses off. They're like non-stop, like just machines. And I think something we talked about earlier in the podcast about going through that fight, that uncomfortable physical, mental torture that fighting involves, stands you in good stead for life and in entrepreneurship and business. Brendan's a classic example of that, having gone through a UFC career, and how difficult training camps are, and fighting, and that whole brutal world, and the discipline that goes with it. Like him having lived that lifestyle for so many years, then going into comedy and podcasting and building his own brand and doing, TV media work. It's like, he actually said that doing stand-up comedy is harder than doing a fight because it's more nerve-wracking for him. But I think at this point, now that he's like well into it and into a good rhythm, it's like carved out that mentality that he's like traveling all the time for it, putting the work in, doing it. It's like the work ethic is there because he's had that discipline from the fight world. And then, and not even just celebrities or entertainment industry people. Like I train a couple of CEOs, people that are like big in movie industry, but behind the scenes, same exact thing. Like, like they're on the phone all the time. They're like working all the time, long hours, like just really dedicated to what they're doing. And yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is just work ethic. They just love their jobs and love what they're doing, and they're like foot to the floor with it all the time.
You're at a place now where, as you've grown more successful, you naturally have more people in your team working under you. What have you learned about leadership, and what do you think the vital qualities that a good leader should have?
Yeah, I've learned a ton about leadership with Box and Burn, like having a team of trainers, like kind of looking to me for like how to do the classes properly, and kind of coaching and mentoring and what not to do, how to build a clientele, like all that kind of stuff I've learned over the years. And now the staff at Box and Burn, I think we've got like 20 trainers, 25, I think like 50 staff total. I think just being yourself, being approachable, being nice, like just having, banter and a laugh with people so they can relate to you, and you do feel like you're someone that they can just like chat to and hang out with, and it's going to be fun. And then the minute that we want to talk about training or building your business or how to be professional, like they switch on when you talk about that stuff because they kind of respect you. So I know there's different leadership styles, and some people will be more like serious or like kind of drill sergeant about things. I think in the fitness industry, it doesn't rub off too well if you are like that. I think the fitness industry people, the reason they get into it is because they want to do it. They have a career that they love and enjoy. It's not like they're in finance where there's pressure and deadlines and they need some money on them. Like, I need this done, you know? So in the fitness industry, I think fun first and foremost. Like, we've created a great team and atmosphere and community in Box and Burn because it's all just built around us having a laugh and having fun. But when it's time to get serious, we're on it and we're sharp and professional and really well prepared with things. So I think that's what I've learned most about it is just, you know, and different personalities too. Like, some people are shy and it's like, hey, how's it going? You kind of approach them that way. It's just using that emotional intelligence. I'm not going to be like with the shy guy, like, hey, how's it going? You know, and then next guy's like that. And you know what I mean? It's just like learning different personalities and how people think and operate and just being able to appeal to that side of their personalities, I think. And I think that comes with your own clients too. You know, like the way I would be approach a session or a coaching someone like Brendan would be totally different to how I'm going to approach and coach a session with like say like I train a couple of yoga instructors who are like mid-40s, right? It's totally different dynamic, totally different personalities and styles, and it's just being able to wear those different hats, still be yourself. That's the same with leadership, I think.
One thing that really, you know, interests me is you're at this level now, you're operating at a really high level in what you do, and you've managed to keep growing and learning and progressing, and you've explored all these different avenues of entrepreneurship that you've been successful in. And for a lot of people, they look at where you are in life and they think that's, you know, that would be the dream. That's all I'd ask for. Be my own boss, do something I love, you know,
Yeah.
arguably make good money, training, you know, successful people. At this level you're at now, how do you make sure that you don't become complacent? How do you continue to motivate yourself to try and go to the next level?
I think like I always have kind of a healthy fear that it could not disappear, but it could drop, right? Like, and there's weeks where like people are out of town, people get injured, people don't want to train, people get demotivated or whatever. It's my job to kind of keep them on track. But I always have this kind of healthy fear that like, look, like if I take my foot off the gas and lose concentration and get complacent with this thing, I'm not going to make money. I'm not going to pay bills. It's going to be gone. Like, in order to sustain it, that's the good thing about being your own boss and having your own business. It forces you to stay sharp and stay on top of stuff and be organized, because the minute that you don't, it will drop. The minute you take your focus off things, it'll go, right? So knowing that, and then I think I call it a healthy fear. I think it is a healthy fear. It's like that fear that like the business is going to drop, because that's always there. I'm always switched on to everything. I'm really clear that like most days and weeks, private training is going to be my number one source of income. I've got to put everything I've got into that, and everybody that I go and see on a weekly basis, and give them everything I've got for that time that they're with me, and the time they're not with me, give them everything they need in between. And then also in terms of the business side, I'm like, it allows me to be creative. So like if I'm not with clients, I'm working on the Box and Burn Academy, an education program. I'm trying to figure out how we can do different creative things with that, how we can build a whole line of boxing equipment and training equipment, how we can create content, how we can license out the Box and Burn name and expand it across the world. Like, what can we do? And those are like the creative elements for me now. And still programming personal training sessions is still creative too, but having a creative brain on the business side, like who can we partner up with? How can we grow this thing? How can we expand? Who do we need to know here to do this? What marketing strategies can we implement? How can we have better email outreach? Like whatever it might be, like that whole world is something that like continuing to learn and build and grow all the time. And being able to do that is just keeping it growing. right? Because if I just sit and think I'm a personal trainer, that's what I do, and I'll put some videos out on Instagram to show that I do this, and then I've got my clients, good. But where am I going to be in, like, you know, like, to be honest, I think personal training, it's a pretty young person's game. You've got to be fit, you've got to be in shape. I don't want to be that personal trainer who's in his 60s in a box gym counting bicep curls, you know, or watching some 50-year-old woman on a machine doing a leg press and counting it and getting paid an hourly rate. Like, that's not what I think personal training is about. So I see myself, like, I know that that's what pays me good, but it requires me to be physically active and be athletic myself. So it's kind of physically demanding, and I know that might not last forever. And I see myself, I kind of set goals. So that's the kind of answer, is like, to keep it growing, I set goals. So in the like next 10 years, I would be like way less hands-on with private training, pick and choose the sessions that I want to do, not be as reliant on it, and have income from the other businesses that I'm trying to grow and work towards. You know, like consulting businesses and consulting gyms and helping them build boxing programs, and traveling, educating other fitness professionals, which for the last 3 years I've been doing a lot of, and that continues to grow, and that's kind of where I see my career steering towards in the future. So yeah, just trying to create multiple sources of revenue and creative outlets to keep this thing growing, not just kind of staying still.
Yeah, man. I imagine that, you know, in something like entrepreneurship, or in your case, in personal training, for example, you mentioned, you know, when you grow older and you don't want to be that guy, you know, holding the mitts at 60 years old. Is it important for you to sort of, like you said, try and create all these revenue streams? But I think in entrepreneurship, they always say that the goal is to get to a point where you can almost, you're making money while you sleep, because there is no pension at the end of it. You know, it's just all your own work. So you have to sort of build an empire almost that makes its own money.
Yeah, definitely. The way to do that is just to be creative. It's like, okay, how can I do something other than what I'm struggling to relate it to other industries or professions or careers, because so like in personal training, fitness mode, but whatever you're in, like whatever you're putting your energy towards, there's always opportunities to grow it. And it's just about thinking of creative ways to expand it. Like the ideas or the things that I'm working on now, I would never have thought have even thought possible like 3 or 4 years ago. I would have been like, oh, okay. And it's like, and the more you think of those ideas and create them, I think the more they kind of spiral. It's like, oh, we can do this with the class. Oh, we can put it on screens. Okay, we can build it up. We can do this. Oh, and then we can like think about licensing this to somebody else and building it, and somebody else can. And the more you think along those lines of how to expand things, the more ideas you'll get, right? If you're never trying to expand your one service or your one idea, then it's just going to stay there, you know? So, yeah, just trying to be creative all the time. And I think having a business partner who's on the same path and the same mindset as you is huge. If you can find somebody that you can bounce ideas off, or who's going to hold you accountable, that's huge. Like me and Tony work our asses off on this stuff all the time, like day in, day out. We're just nonstop on it. And we're constantly in communication about where everything's at, where everything needs to go, what's next. And I think if I was doing it on my own, I would still have the same drive and passion, but it would be 10 times harder, because there'd be nobody kind of checking on it. There'd be nobody like holding me accountable. Is this done? Is this done? I kind of force yourself to do it. So I'd say a huge benefit to doing this is finding a business partner.
Love that, man. I think that's, you know, perfect way to sort of wrap up your story. And as we start to wind down, I've just got a few questions for you that I ask every guest that comes on the show. So they're non-specific. The first one is, we've talked about the ways in which you're investing in your business. What ways are you investing in yourself as a human?
Physical activity on a daily basis. I have to run, keep myself in shape, strength train. Things like short 5-10 minute meditations, breath work to like calm and get oxygen back into my brain. Like usually at the end of the day, I'll do that where my brain's been overloaded in so many different areas and I've been physically blasted. It's like, okay, I just got to like wind down for 10 minutes. And then it's amazing the powers of that. I've like really recommend doing those, just deep breathing really for like 10 minutes just to get oxygen back into your brain and calm your nervous system down. That's a huge one for me. Spending time with my 4-year-old, it sounds kind of cliche, but those days where I've just got him like for 2 days straight, I'll kind of check in on business stuff, maybe go through inbox or whatever, but for the most part it's kind of just pushed to one side for a day or two, and I just zone in on him and give him all my attention and do things like just be at the beach with him all day, or like take him out and about, swim or whatever it is, just have a laugh with him. Like that is just like mental relief, and it's just so fulfilling that when I get back on that work day after I've spent that quality time with him, I'm like doubly motivated to get back on it. Like, right back in now, let's go again. So just simple things like just staying sharp physically and mentally, looking after myself, you know, making sure I'm like in peak physical condition as much as I possibly can be, and spending good quality time with people that you love, having good relationships. I think those are huge. The recipe for success right there.
Beautiful. So the next question, this could be people you may know personally or people you've never met, but who are some of your biggest mentors in life?
Tony's a huge mentor. Like, we disagree, don't get me wrong, it's not all roses. Like, we fight and disagree and argue and get heated about things like pretty regularly. But it just stems from passion, right? I respect the guy so much. And I'd like to think that he respects me a lot too. So I think Tony's huge. Like, and having a business partner that is going to do that with you is massive for anyone trying to start a business. Look for somebody who's going to push you and motivate you and inspire you and bounce ideas off each other. Tony's huge. The clients that I work with are huge mentors and inspirations. Seeing what they get to do for their careers and seeing their work ethic and their drive and the conversations I have with them about things, they're massive inspiration. I'm like, right, I'm seeing how this guy's doing this, like, okay, great. And picking brains and just having conversations about things. I think, yeah, my clients definitely. Tony and my clients are huge. And then, again, my 4-year-old, like, just seeing what his future looks like and me being completely responsible for his well-being and his education and all that kind of stuff is a huge responsibility. And if I don't have my stuff together, it's going to only affect him. So I want to have a really good foundation so that he can have like the best opportunity too. So that's a huge motivating factor as well. So I'd say the combination of those three.
So I'm not sure if, you know, being an entrepreneur so much gives you as much free time to read, but has there ever been a book you read in your life that's impacted you that you could recommend?
In terms of mindset and that kind of thing, not really. I tend to just kind of rely on my own judgment with a lot of things. I'm not saying like I know everything. I'm not saying that from an arrogance standpoint, but I really do. I just try and like analyze things and process it and then make decisions. Like I like analyze things so much and listen to things so much. So I wouldn't say one specific book in terms of that, but a lot of fitness and training books that gave me a good knowledge base. I love Ben Greenfield's books. He's a huge podcaster in the fitness and wellness world. His books were huge for me when I was starting to get deep into training stuff. I love the way he thinks. Like nutritionists, like Rhonda Patrick or stuff. I tend to listen to podcasts more than like actually sit down and read. I just find that I absorb things in audio form a lot better, kind of on my own time. But love listening to people like Rogan and all his guests, and you know, he has some great minds and great brains on there. Just listening to discussions and thoughts and opinions on things. I love that kind of stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't really be able to specifically pinpoint one book, but yeah, that's kind of where I consume my attitudes and opinions and stuff and knowledge.
The last question I have for you then. So all the lessons you've learned throughout your life, if you had to sort of distill them, and if every person on the planet was sort of tuned into the same radio frequency, and you had to deliver a message or pass on a lesson that you think every person should learn or they could benefit from learning, what would Glenn Holmes' message to the world be?
Just work hard, spend time doing what you want to do as much as you possibly can, and just be humble. Don't get a big head, don't get complacent, don't get cocky, don't develop a bad attitude. Just, you know, always have that humility and just keep working hard and be as good as you possibly can at the thing that you want to do. Like, just, you know, make sure you're an expert and talented at it. And we're taught this thing like, oh, everyone's special and everyone can do what they want, right? But it's not necessarily true. Like, we're all probably not special. We're all probably pretty average to start, right? The people that get to be special and great are because they've put the work ethic in and realize that they're not special, and they've got to develop a skill by doing it day in, day out, over and over and over again. So if you look at Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, Floyd Mayweather, whoever, they realize like early on, like, I need to get better at this thing. I need to get better at this thing. I need to get better. I need to get better. I need to get better. They realize that they're not special, right? They become special because they've dedicated their entire life, day in, day out, to doing that one discipline, and they've become geniuses and they've become special at it, right? And I think the narrative now is, yeah, you're kind of born special, like you can do whatever you want. So people get complacent because they're told they're special at something. And it's like, oh, well, I'm special, I can go and do this. And then it's like 6 months later, it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to go and do this. And they just bounce around with no direction or motivation to do anything because they're fed this narrative that it's like, you can do whatever you want and you're special. If we told people, look, you're pretty average at everything, pick something that you love and dedicate every single minute of every single day to it, and then you will become special at it. That's kind of the message I would like to see put out there a lot more.